NFLMAX Radio. We are back broadcasting live tonight, Wednesday, November 14th. We're going to recap the past week and cover some important breakouts from week 10 with league trade deadlines looming heading into week 11. We're going to talk about some trade options for your teams in Dynasty and look towards some postseason matchups. So we're back taking over your YouTube airways tonight. And as always, Ewok Juggernauts here with the hot pineapples. Nick, what is going on, man?
Not much. Just happy we finally have some clarity from the Le'Veon Bell situation. Tired of talking about it. As a Connor owner, I am thrilled. It's a happy day. And so it's going to be interesting to see what the heck happens. But I'm sure we'll be talking about that tonight. So I'll leave it for a little while.
Absolutely. Le'Veon Bell, as we all know, did not report and did not sign his franchise tag on Tuesday before 4 o'clock. So, we're going to see what happens here for next year. But we'll talk about next year in the offseason. Got plenty to talk about tonight. It's almost like it was an episode of Back to the Future this past week in week 10.
You've got to come back with me. Where? Back to the future.
Big breakout performances from a bunch of guys we've been waiting on. Guys that we've been waiting on all year and guys that we were kind of hoping that in the second half would come around, and they did. Just to name a few off the top of my head here, and we'll dive in deep in a few seconds here, but David Johnson, Leonard Fournette, Allen Robinson, Aaron Jones, and of course, we'll get to Amari Cooper as always. But let's start with David Johnson here. A few weeks ago, I talked about him, and I was telling you guys to buy now. Now was the time to buy a few weeks ago. And David Johnson, the David Johnson of old, is back. And this week, David Johnson against the Chiefs, 21 carries, 98 rushing yards, a touchdown, 9 targets, 7 receptions, 85 yards, and a touch. 37 fantasy points in a PPR. So, Nick, what do you think here? David Johnson, is he back?
Yeah, I mean, he's you were never doubting the talent or the juice that he had left. He has stuff left in the tank. That was never a question. It was more the coaching staff and the usage. And you knew Byron Leftwich was coming in. You knew he was going to maybe scheme some stuff up and switch some things up. And that's exactly what we're seeing here. And this was all a product of usage for David Johnson early in the year. I sold one of my shares, and for me, it was just kind of a resetting of the clock. I had a good core at wide receiver. I needed to get younger at running back and give myself a runway. But it's not like I, was super eager to get rid of David Johnson. I had said the whole time I was neutral, and that was only because I believed in the talent, but I didn't believe in the coaching staff. And now we're seeing, Leftwich come in, starting to do some more creative things, and he's using David Johnson the way that David Johnson should be used. And that's all he really needed to be productive. So do I regret my trade? No, I still don't. It was a good move for where I was at. But yeah, I think he's back. And as long as they continue to use him like this, he's going to give you some nice weeks. And he still has a couple of years at least left in the tank.
Yeah, he's 26 years of age. And for teams that are trying to make a push here, I mean, we're going into week 11. So if you haven't solidified that playoff spot, win your division or however your league sets it up, he's got a nice schedule the rest of the way here. He's got to play the Raiders next week, the Chargers, the Packers, the Lions, the Falcons. I mean, the Falcons, the Lions, and the Raiders alone are top elite matchups for running backs, especially in a PPR. And, he's going to be one of those guys going to help you carry your team into the playoffs and even, through the playoff season, weeks 14, 15, 16. He's going to look good. And let's face it, if he is back to being the David Johnson of old, we're talking about a matchup-proof running back in a PPR is going to catch balls. So,
Yeah, and it's funny because you're talking about some teams who probably like have been super successful the past couple years. These teams that had both David Johnson and Le'Veon Bell, they're sitting up there typically at the top of their standings, and they were just kind of waiting and waiting and waiting for these guys to come around. And obviously, Lev is going to come to fruition, but it's nice to see David Johnson have a bounce back, and some of the good teams at the top, or even teams who took the shot and acquired him low at his price now. I know in one of my leagues, my buddy Charles, who was on here with us a couple of weeks ago, he just acquired David Johnson to make a run and a push for the playoffs, and he's going to be really happy about that. I think it's going to solidify some of the teams who maybe just snuck in the background. And if you can get a guy like that to hit late in the season, even if you're a 5 or 6 seed, that can be a game changer, and anything can happen in the playoffs. And with a soft schedule like his, he could potentially be on a lot of league winning teams.
Absolutely. So, okay, well, along with David Johnson, he was the top running back performer up there with Christian McCaffrey. We all know Christian McCaffrey, the Zeke Elliott's of the world, the Todd Gurley's. We're not going to talk about those guys, but right up there in the top performances for running backs this past week, Aaron Jones. I've been talking about Aaron Jones for a long time, and really big fan. This was his breakout performance. If you were an Aaron Jones truther, this was the week you've been waiting for. 15 carries, 145 yards, 2 touchdowns, and caught 3 receptions for 27 yards. And of course, obviously he did against the Dolphins, who, everybody seems to be lighting up the Dolphins this year. But listen, this is, Aaron Jones is here. It's happening. Rodgers has talked very highly about him over the past year. He's going to be a very key running back here for the second half of the season. So thoughts on Aaron Jones here?
Yeah, he's interesting. I actually really liked Aaron Jones coming out of his draft class last year. I had a couple shares. I sold a lot of them off this year. And I just didn't see it. I didn't believe in him as a guy who could carry the load. He's not a very good between the tackles runner. He's kind of a guy who needs a runway. Like he needs a clear path, and then he's going to use his speed and his burst to hit the hole. He's not a guy who's going to miss the hole or the hole is going to close on him. If the hole is there, he's going to be successful. But I just don't see him as the grinder type where, if you need a couple tough yards, he's going to be able to get that for you. But that's the nice thing for the Packers is the way Aaron Rodgers plays and the way he creates, it's the perfect kind of, setup for a guy like Aaron Jones to be successful. My gut was telling me that Jamal Williams, who I also really liked coming out of that draft class, when they drafted both of those guys, I was really high on both of them. I was actually a little bit higher on Aaron Jones coming out, but I had a funny feeling that Jamal Williams was going to take the job and run with it this year. They gave him the first crack last year. He's your prototypically sized guy. He's your guy who's going to be able to get the yards, when it's a short yardage situation. I really thought he was going to play better than he did this year. It didn't obviously pan out. I still like him as a dynasty asset. He's nothing that should be dropped. He's one snap away. And if you can get, a running back free and clear, and there's clarity there, he is the obvious number 2. If Aaron Jones were to go down, there's definitely a bounce back factor there to them flip or to make an impact if you're making a run in the playoffs if something were to happen to Aaron Jones. And I'm not going to sit here and say Aaron Jones is the type that's guaranteed to hold up. He's thin. Again, that's just the type of build that he is. He's thinner. He needs a runway. He's not going to get between the tackles. So there's still value for Jamal Williams, but it does look like, Aaron Jones at this point has a stranglehold on that job. And as long as they can keep, creating the lanes for him and giving him that space, he's going to be successful, and he's going to look good in that offense.
Yeah, and it's an offense that you definitely want a piece of when you've got Aaron Jones at the helm. When you got Aaron Rodgers at the helm. And just looking ahead here, he's got to, the next couple weeks going to be a little tough for him. He's got to play Seattle. He's got to play Minnesota, both games on the road in Seattle, in Minnesota. But then it gets real nice. He's got to play the Cardinals, the Falcons, the Jets down the stretch here. So
yeah, I'm just a little more skeptical of him as like a long-term dynasty asset. I think he's usable for this year. I kind of don't see if they don't believe in Jamal Williams, I feel like you're going to see them go back to the well and maybe like a day 2, like round 3 type of running back who maybe can come in and they think can be, both the short yardage and the kind of guy. Cause I don't think Jamal Williams is what they thought he was. Like, I think they thought he could maybe hit the runways too. Whereas when he had he wasn't quick enough to get through. It felt like it was closing up on him. But if they can go back to the well, and it's not going to be this year, but a year like 2020, you may see Aaron Jones be a 2-year kind of production window. And if you don't sell, next year, then you might be stuck holding the bag there.
Yeah, well, they took Jamal Williams in the 4th round last year, ahead of Aaron Jones, obviously. But listen, Aaron Jones, I mean, you take a look at his metrics, it's through the roof. He's 7.7 yards per carry in college. And the speed is there. The agility is there. He's got a 6.823 cone and runs a 4.5 and a 40, and his broad vert and burst is just, well above average. So he's a very good athlete at the running back position and somebody who's explosive on the ground. So we'll see. I mean, I'm definitely a fan of Aaron Jones long-term. I never really liked Jamal Williams. Sorry. And of the 2 last year, I liked Aaron Jones better, but we'll see. I mean,
it's going to be interesting. He's just the guy to keep an eye on, watch the market and see what, when you start to look at ADP values, where does he come in? Because it feels like right now he's the type of guy who could go into the offseason because there's not much in this 19 class. It's the clear cut number 1. And people get all excited when you have that Green Bay offense. And if you can, cash out at that point, you probably spent a second, maybe even a third on Aaron Jones. So if you can cash out on a guy like that, who's not prototypically sized, who doesn't profile as a long-term number 1, then, that seems like the right move for a guy like Aaron Jones.
Yeah. Let's stay with the Packers for 1 second here. We all know about Devontae Adams, but MVS this past week, he looked good.
Yeah, he's looked good. I mean, he's looked good. So I'm a believer. I think he's got a stranglehold on that job now as a number 2. I think Cobb might be done.
Yeah, I've got Cobb in the NFLMAX league, but he just can't get past these injuries. I'm pretty sure his contract is over at the end of the season, but I'll have to double check that. But MVS this week, he only had 6 receptions, but 44 yards. But he looked good in the process. And he's the perfect complement to Devontae Adams. And who would have thought out of the 3 receivers they took this past year that MVS would be the guy? I was a Jamon Moore guy, and we both talked about ESB, but here we are. MVS is doing his thing, and he's outplaying the other 2 rookies. So,
yeah, no, I'm a believer. He's the type of guy who you didn't have to spend a lot to get him. So if you got him, kudos. He's gonna be straight cash value for you. You're playing with house money at this point. He's not the type of guy who, unless he skyrockets in value, you want to get rid of, because if you can get the cheap poker chip in an offense like the Packers, and you already have MVS, you got him for nothing. You may have even gotten him for free. And, that's the type of play where you keep it on your roster. He's not clogging your roster. He's got standalone fantasy value. So, it's not like you're holding Trey Quinn from Washington, who had all the preseason hype, and, he's just taking up a space on your roster. He's a valuable piece. And if you got him for free or you got him for very cheap, then you're playing with house money at this point. So,
yeah, I agree. So let's stay in that division, and let's go on to a couple other teams who played each other this week, the Lions and the Bears. And this game, listen, we've all been waiting for Allen Robinson, and finally it happened. And one of the top wide receiver performances of the week, 8 targets, 6 receptions, 133 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And boy, did he look fresh. He looked ready to roll. And Trubisky had a good game. I know, both of us have been very critical of Trubisky, but I mean, dare I say it, he's making us look bad here. But Allen Robinson, long-term prognosis, I've been a big fan of his. I've had him for a long time, since his rookie year. For me, it's an upgraded quarterback going from obviously Bortles to Mitch. And this offense is looking good. and they're clicking. They're moving the ball down the field now, and I think moving forward here, Allen Robinson can be that guy you're looking for to help you make a push into the postseason. And I do think, as he gets comfortable in the offense, and let's not forget, like, this guy's coming off a major injury last year, missing the whole season. So it seems like he's ready. He feels comfortable in the offense. It's a new offense for him. He's healthy. And, this could be it for Allen Robinson. It could be wheels up now in this offense with Nagy. So what do you think? Have you changed your mind here with Allen Robinson? I know you were kind of critical on him before, but what do you think?
No, it's not that I was super critical. It's just that I didn't view him as really a wide receiver one. We had this discussion last year when we were in talks for, specific players, and, you had offered me Allen Robinson. I don't even really remember what the deal was in place, but we had that back and forth discussion, and you seemed to think that he was a locked and loaded wide receiver one, and I didn't necessarily agree. I still don't necessarily agree that he's a locked and loaded wide receiver one, but he's definitely someone who has value. This Bears offense, like you said, is humming, and he finally looked healthy. Like you were saying, that's the key. He's coming off a major injury. You want to be able to see these guys cut and explode out of their cuts, and he finally looked like he had that juice when he's rounding the top of his routes. He's able to, kind of bounce and create that separation. It's something that you weren't seeing before. And not only that, like you're saying, this offense is humming. Like Trubisky, he still misses some throws. Where, like, even in this game, I went back and I watched, because I have this ongoing thing with one of my best friends, Richard, in our league, and he has Trubisky, and he always puts him out every week. He's like, Trubisky up for a trade. I'm like, well, Trubisky stinks. And we kind of banter back and forth. So I can't speak, being unknowledgeable. So I go and I pretty much watch every Bears game, believe it or not. And he still is missing some throws that he should hit. But
do you think we're being too hard on Trubisky? Because we both agree about Trubisky.
No, yeah, I think he's taken positive steps.
Yeah, I mean, it's only second year. I'm starting to turn the corner. That's why I'm throwing it out there, because I'm starting to turn the corner on Trubisky, and he's in one of the top 5 passing offenses in the NFL. It's the Bears, it's the Rams, it's the Patriots, Chicago. I mean, like. Yeah. So
it is interesting. I want to say we're being hard on him, and then I go look at PFF, and he's like, out of anyone who's taken a snap this year, he's like in the bottom 50.
Is he really?
Yeah, like he was 3 from the bottom in passer rating. But what was really making the difference with him is he's using his legs. He's the top rated runner at the quarterback position. So he's creating space. They're scheming. Nagy's a very good offensive mind, obviously, coming from, Kansas City. You see the production that this offense can put up. And I think Anthony Miller, I was very critical of Anthony Miller coming out. I didn't believe that he would be able to make an impact. I think you're starting to see him kind of rise up too, and people are going to have to start taking him more seriously. Obviously, Burton, I don't believe in, but regardless, the dude can run routes, and he's someone that you have to pay attention to. And you're going to start seeing things open up. And when you get a healthy Allen Robinson in that kind of system with other legit weapons that people have to pay attention to, sans Tarek Cohen and all those guys. I mean, Jordan Howard, I don't count as a weapon.
God.
I don't count him.
We talk about who you can cut in Dynasty. You might as well freaking cut Jordan Howard.
He's like an 18 wheeler. It takes him that long to get going. Like he gets the ball and he slowly gets to top speed. But anyway, outside of him, there's speed on that team. There's weapons on that team. And so I think what you're seeing for Allen Robinson is just he's finally healthy. He's got space to operate. Trubisky's able to extend plays, and they're going to scheme him to the intermediate part of the field. And I actually, believe it or not, Russ, I didn't tell you this. I yesterday traded a second for Allen Robinson to make a run.
Wow, that's a steal.
Yeah.
That's a steal.
Well, it's a contract league, and he's expiring, but I do have an extension and plenty of cap space. So I do think I'm going to end up extending him.
I love it. That's a great trade. And let's not forget, like we're just like a few years removed here from his 1,400-yard season and 14 touchdowns with Blake Bortles. I mean, if you could have 1,400 receiving yards and 14 touchdowns with Blake Bortles, and here you are, now with Trubisky, Nagy, and all these weapons like we're talking about, Chicago, he's gotta. I know he missed a few games this year, and obviously he's probably not gonna get to 1,400, but somewhere close in the vicinity. And the next year, if he's healthy in the same system, a year later, yeah, I love Allen Robinson. And you touched on Anthony Miller briefly here, who in the preseason was my 3rd ranked rookie wide receiver. I love Anthony Miller. If you've got Anthony Miller shares out there, man, you are loving it, because let's pull up his stats this past week. He looked awesome. 6 targets, 5 receptions, 122 yards and a touchdown. And, the comparisons are there, Antonio Brown light, dare we say the 2 letters AB, but, listen, I love Anthony Miller, and that offense is going to be looking real good once they all get comfortable. So, yeah, Allen Robinson, Anthony Miller, Jordan Howard, get rid of him, please. I would take anything, like whatever I can get for Jordan Howard. I would just trade him for whatever.
I know it's pretty brutal, because it's like all empty yards. It's either like 30 yards and 2 touchdowns or 60 yards and no touchdowns. So either way, neither of which are even fantasy. Like, even if he gets 30 yards and 2 touchdowns, I think it wasn't this past week. It was the week prior. He had 2 touchdowns and he still was like running back 12 or 13. He had 2 touchdowns and was still running back 12 or 13. Like, he's not a difference maker at all in a fantasy lineup. He's status quo. Like, he may not even be on the replacement level. Like, I don't even know if he's worth starting. He definitely doesn't win you a week.
But he's the kind of running back that these NFL teams love. These
I know. Yeah, he's a consummate pro. He'll be in the league for a while.
Yeah. Well, hopefully he'll be out of Chicago soon. But staying in that game, your boy Kerryon Johnson looked incredible. I know in the NFLMAX league, we have a Slack group, and I'm constantly.
Are you changing your teams?
Listen, he is what he is. He's doing his thing. How many rushing yards did he have this week? 51 rushing yards, 14 carries. He averaged 3 yards a carry. It's not good. But again, he's playing the Bears, have a solid defense. But here's the thing: 6 receptions.
And that line is just it can't be ignored. It's dreadful. It's dreadful. It can't keep Stafford upright. It's dreadful. So 51 yards on 14 carries against the Bears, and being able to break the goal line like that on his one crack. I mean, leaping over he's everything that I've been saying, which is he's good in every phase of the game. He's not amazing. He's not a super special talent, but he is a very productive, useful, and he's going to be a very good back in the NFL for a pretty lengthy amount of time.
Yeah. He's not leaving anytime. Like, he's going to be Detroit's running back for a long time. This is the guy. Like, I grew up with Barry Sanders as a kid. After that, God, it's like the curse of Barry, James Stewart, and now recently Amir Abdullah. But hold on, this guy right here, the GOAT. Okay, so the reason why I'm so critical of Kerryon Johnson, I'm just gonna hug Barry right now, and we're gonna talk about Kerryon Johnson. The reason why I'm so critical,
I like that romantic music in the back.
I should. We'll get some Celine Dion, and we'll talk about Barry. Barry's the GOAT. Okay, if you don't know it, if you just tune into football and you're new to football, this is the GOAT right here. This is the greatest running back of all time. So the reason why I was so critical of Kerryon, and I've been very critical of every running back. Take a look. Take a look at all the running backs we've had in Detroit. Doug Beach, you know what I'm talking about. It's been a long run of really bad running backs.
Who is your favorite?
What do you mean? There's only one.
Well, I mean, after Barry Sanders, who's your favorite running back after Barry Sanders?
Oh, wow. Man.
Like, who have you actually been like, okay, I like them?
Okay, I'll tell you who it is. And this ties into why I'm so hard on Kerryon. It's Amir Abdullah. I loved Amir Abdullah coming out of college. And
all right, not what you loved metrically. Who did you actually watch and you were like, you could actually root for them? Because there's no way you watched Amir Abdullah. And I get it. He maybe didn't get like a total, crack at it. And I do think that he'll catch on somewhere else, and it will be interesting to see what happens with him. But come on, give me someone real.
I mean, the guys that come to mind from like old school, I mean, obviously Javid Best, loved him coming out of college, and more recently Amir Abdullah, but Javid Best, Kevin Smith, those guys. But it's a long laundry list of terrible, Luke Staley, Cedric Irvin. I remember when they had 3 running backs on one team trying to fill Barry's shoes, but whatever. But that's the reason why I was so hard on Carry-On, and I'm still going to be hard on him because
he's not Barry Sanders.
He's not Barry Sanders, and he's not an RB1. I could name 12 to 15 guys I'd rather have over him, but that situation is juicy. But the O-line's terrible. They're going to have to do something next year, but he's looking great. He's looking great. So we're here. We're in the Carry-On Johnson era in Detroit.
It's a beautiful thing.
We can move on from Detroit and Chicago. Let's go to Dallas. Okay. So the Eagles played the Cowboys this past week. Very entertaining game. A lot to be said on these two teams here. Let's go to Philly first and talk about the receivers, because last week we talked about the addition of Golden Tate and what's going to do that offense. Obviously, it's going to help Carson Wentz, like we talked about already, but it's got to dilute the wide receivers, and we saw it on Sunday. Al Galore came out of nowhere, had himself a nice game, and Jeffrey saw a reduction in production, and Jordan Matthews looked good. So what do you think here moving forward with these wide receivers? And I guess more specifically, how Nelson Aguilar played on Sunday.
Yeah, it's interesting the way it worked out. I don't think this game is going to be indicative of what happens moving forward. Obviously Ertz is going to eat. He got his volume, his typical volume. That's not going to change.
Typical? 40 points, typical?
I mean, they're just peppering him. And typically, you don't get the touchdowns with him. Is his MO. He gets the volume and the yardage, not typically the touchdowns. So that's where that boost in the game came from. And that's his ceiling. Like if he can put it in. The problem is he doesn't typically do that. He's not usually your red zone guy. He doesn't usually put up the touchdowns, but his volume and yardage alone is sustainable. Where, I would like to see the ball go was Alshon. They were treating him like a number 1 for the first time. Early, once he came back and once Wentz was back, they were actually treating him like a number 1, and he was putting up number 1 wide receiver numbers. Like, the dude's talented, and I don't know if the addition of Golden Tate, like if he just wasn't acclimated to the offense, and that's why they ran with more Al Galore and Matthews. I don't know, what they schemed or why they drew it up that way. I can't see that being indicative of the way it goes. I can't see Al Galore and Matthews being really an important part of this offense moving forward. I think you're going to see Alshon kind of have a bounce back, but I don't know that they're going to treat him like the number 1. So a lot remains to be seen in Philadelphia. Too many weapons.
A lot of weapons. And when it comes to Alshon specifically, I just don't see it from here on out with the addition of Tate, because, this was Tate's first game. We can't expect much from Tate right now. He's got to get acclimated to the offense, and it's going to take him a few weeks,
And he's not Amari Cooper. Like, you don't just put up a great first game like that. Yeah.
We'll talk about Amari Cooper in a second. But once Tate gets rolling here, I don't know about Alshon. Listen, obviously he's the wide receiver 1 in that offense, but it looks like it's going through Ertz. So if Ertz going to continue to get like 10, 15 targets a game, and then Tate gets comfortable in a few weeks and he's doing his thing on the ground, yards after catch, obviously Alshon's a red zone target, but I don't think we're going to see, prior to Tate, what we were expecting to see out of Alshon, 20 points a week. I don't know. I mean, I just can't see it with all the weapons they have there. But okay, so let's continue on in this game. Josh Adams looking good, and that's one of your guys here. And they came out and said that he's going to get a lot more work now moving forward. And What are your thoughts here? I know you talked on him briefly a few weeks ago. Josh Adams, what do you think now can he be the lead dog in Philly? Can he carry the load?
He was running well on this past game. Just obviously I'm a Cowboy fan, so I watched every single snap. He was running well. He can move, and earlier in the year I was saying, before the offseason, I made a bold prediction that he would actually become a relevant piece of this offense, and ended up being the guy who was getting a bulk of the carries. And it didn't look like that was going to come to fruition. I didn't see it even on the tape. He looked like he was slow. Like, when his feet stopped, the whole play was coming to a halt. And now all of a sudden you see a guy who even was able to hit the outside on a couple runs this past week. I mean, he's prototypically sized. Obviously there's no pedigree there. He's undrafted. So, you always kind of have to be cautious of those kinds of guys. But as far as like functional for your lineup for the rest of the way, I mean, I think he definitely provides you at least some depth value. You're probably not going to have him in your lineup, so the impact probably isn't going to be that great. As far as a dynasty asset, I'm not looking for him to be, a cornerstone. But if you can maybe, if he finishes out the year strong and nothing crazy happens in that backfield, and you kind of still have that, the three same guys on the roster with Clement, Adams, and Smallwood, and they may bring in some help, but this class doesn't scare me at all. You may find a little window there where you can maybe move Adams for, something like a second, like a late second. And that to me would be, definitely cashing in on that value. That would be a deal that I would definitely be willing to explore. He was running well. I just don't see him being a long-term dynasty asset with no pedigree. But he is prototypically sized, and those kinds of guys can provide value to a team.
He's Latavius Murray. It's like literally like Latavius Murray 2.0. You look at his metrics, and he's almost a carbon copy of him. Tall, big, lanky runner, and he's got the size and the speed. And obviously there's really not much competition in Philly right now in that backfield. So for the rest of the year, I love him in that offense. And very similar road path, we can see him taking here, like a Latavius Murray's road path, who was also an undrafted free agent rookie by the Raiders. And, they developed him, and there was a lot of hype once he started getting carries. And I could definitely see a similar career path for Josh Adams. But
yeah, I mean, and listen, this is a lesson 101 when you're hitting your rookie drafts and you're like in rounds, 4, because Josh Adams was pretty much my pick, all throughout. And, I did take Bo Scarborough where I could get him because I thought, Rod Smith was undersized, and I thought Scarborough had a legit shot to be the backup running back there to Zeke, which would be a very good role. Obviously that one didn't pan out, but Josh Adams, don't be afraid to take some of the undrafted guys if they fall to a depth chart, if they're prototypically sized, number 1. 2, they check some of your boxes and metrics. And then 3, they fall into a situation that, could provide value in of itself. I'm not the kind of guy who's going to tell you chase situation up at the top of the draft. Like Ronald Jones, that to me was chasing a situation. You weren't going with talent there. But on the back end, if you can find a depth chart that's weaker, like that was one of my big notes for Josh Adams. It's like, yeah, he's undrafted, but he's prototypically sized, and he's in a depth chart that's pretty much wide open. And Ajayi, they weren't giving him, workhorse carries. So there was concern there with injury. We know his fragileness, and if that's the right word for it, fragileness. And obviously that worked out. Like not worked out. You never wish injury upon everyone, but he went down. He's out for the year. And now all of a sudden you see them with the opportunity to give Corey Clement, who's also prototypically sized every carry, and they don't. They want to use him in an optimized role. And then you look at Wendell Smallwood. He was almost cut this offseason, and he's not prototypically sized. So all of a sudden, who's rising up the depth chart? It's the undrafted free agent who's prototypically sized and checks some of the boxes in the metrics. So lesson learned, when you're drafting in the 4th round, try to find those guys. Even if it was James Conner in the 3rd round or the 4th round, I got him in one of my leagues in the 4th round of a rookie draft. Like, he was the clear-cut backup there. I mean, a little different case because he was pedigreed, but if he's the clear-cut backup and Lev went down, obviously you see what he can do in that offense. So when you start getting into those rounds, you've got to start looking at opportunity to cost, upside there as well.
Yeah, opportunity and metrics, and he checks both of those boxes. So let's move on. So in that game, obviously you got the Cowboys, your boys, the Cowboys. And, a podcast, a Max episode would not be complete without the mention of the one and only Amari Cooper. So Amari Cooper, where do we begin with this guy? The love affair with Nick and Amari Cooper.
Just so I can say it, my jersey's in the mail right now.
Yeah.
No, I'm dead serious. It's actually on.
Is it really?
Oh yeah. I ordered one. It's on its way.
God help us.
I'll wear it as soon as I get it. It'll be on the first episode we do after I get it.
Oh, I can't wait for that episode. Save it for the one time that he, scores 2 touchdowns and 100 yards. But, I said before, and, it's the same. I'm going to say the same thing I said last week. And look at how this game planned out. The offense is running through Zeke. And we saw that. Zeke putting up a monster game, 30-something fantasy points. But Amari Cooper, listen, obviously it's a sexier situation. You're playing for the Dallas Cowboys. But like I said before, you were in Oakland with a gunslinger with Carr. And, already we're seeing, 15 points this week, 10 points a week before that. I'm not quite sure we're going to see the boom, but maybe that's actually good though. I'm thinking it through. We used to see a boom bust 25, 30 point week in Oakland and then like a dud, and now maybe we'll see more consistency out of Cooper, 10, 15 points a week on a consistent basis. And we might not see that. Like, we're not going to see that 3 touchdown game. I don't know. I just can't see it in that offense, especially with Dak. I don't know. To me, it's the same. It's the same old Amari Cooper. He's just in a sexier situation because he's playing for the Cowboys, and nothing's really changed for me. So, but listen, his yards and separation, like you talked about, it's there. I mean, it's so there, and you see it, on these games that are nationally televised. Not sure anybody was watching the Raiders before he got traded, but I don't know. What do you think here?
All right. Here's what I think. So the talent is clearly there. Like you're saying, the separation, it's there. I mean, Dak I would agree with you. We're not going to see the boom bust like 25, 30 point game, but for this year, that's kind of what you want. You want him to stabilize, because if you had him, you were getting frustrated week in and week out, putting him in your lineup. So he kind of stabilizes the floor. Like with volume comes production. And he is going to get volume. And Dak is a separation passer, and that's what Amari Cooper brings. And so he is going to catch the ball, and he is going to produce. Like Derek Carr was a gunslinger. He liked to try to fit it into tighter windows. They just didn't mesh as well. They weren't, a perfect pairing. Dak is a perfect kind of pairing. Well, I shouldn't say that. Dak's not a perfect pairing for anybody.
No, it's not.
Amari Cooper is a perfect pair for Dak because he can generate some separation, and Dak has to see it before he throws it. And whoever the announcer was, I'm drawing a blank on the name, did an excellent.
Chris Collinsworth.
Oh no, the other one. Whoever I can't stand Chris Collinsworth.
Well, Collinsworth had a lot of good things to say about Dak's, footwork, but I don't know if you were going there.
Okay, maybe it was Collinsworth, but if I'm giving him any credit, I'm not. I refuse to say his name. I like
Collinsworth. You don't like Collinsworth?
No, I think he's awful. Anyway, Dak drops back, and he has an outbreaking route to the sideline, and literally he has the separation, and Dak continues to shuffle. He broke it down four shuffles, releases the ball, and it takes Gallup right out of bounds. Yep. I mean, he had the window. The separation was there, and he still wasn't willing to throw it.
But that's Dak. Dak, he's a see it, throw it quarterback. He can't anticipate these throws. And
I know.
But that's a problem for Cooper. I mean, listen, the Cowboys are not going to get rid of Dak Prescott. Okay, we can crap on Dak Prescott all we want, and the media can crap on him too, and they're giving him his due. But listen, the Cowboys are not going to get rid of Dak Prescott. So you got Dak Prescott, you got Zeke Elliott. The offense is going to run through him. And now Cooper's tied to a quarterback who's not really that great.
I know, but hear me out. like you want him to stabilize this year. But if they can go out and get another weapon, and now all of a sudden you're trotting out Amari Cooper, you're trotting out Michael Gallup, and you're trotting out a legitimate another weapon, like maybe Brian Edwards, who obviously it's way early for a mock right now, but I haven't seen Brian Edwards go anywhere in the first round. So the Cowboys are sitting there with their early second round pick. You go get a guy like Brian Edwards, right, who can play on the outside, and all of a sudden you've got a nice 3 wide receiver core, and then you throw in Cole Beasley, who again is a separator, which is why he did so well with Dak a couple years ago. You run the offense through Zeke, you get your offensive line back and healthy, and all of a sudden you have an offense that has weapons, and Dak doesn't have to be perfect. You've seen it operate with Dak Prescott at the helm. It is possible. So this year, I think this is the best case for Amari Cooper. It was a toxic situation in Oakland. All of a sudden he stabilizes. He's going to get the volume. He'll put up a decent floor. It's not going to give you a huge ceiling this year, but the potential is there in the future for better things.
Yeah. And, for this year specifically, the rest of the way, he's got a cake schedule. It's incredible. I'm just pulling it up real quick.
You can play him with confidence in your lineups from here forward.
The next 4 weeks, the Falcons, the Redskins, the Saints, the Eagles, those are all elite wide receiver matchups. And then the Buccaneers, if you can get to the championship game, week 16. So I get it. Listen, the rest of the way, he's going to be fine. The floor is there, like you said. But just to play devil's advocate here, talking about Dak Prescott and what a crappy situation Cooper's in with Dak Prescott can improve. It's not all terrible with Dak Prescott. And, shame on the Cowboys for, Kellen Moore is mentoring Dak Prescott. I mean, really?
He's the coach now. He's the quarterback coach. Right, he's not just like the sideline mentor anymore. He's the legit quarterback coach.
This is who they hire as the quarterback coach, Kellen Moore.
I will say, Jason Garrett obviously was a backup quarterback. He was awful. And look at him now. He's still an idiot, but it's possible. It's possible to be a backup quarterback. Like, it's happened numerous times in the NFL, because most of the time you are holding a clipboard, and most of the time you are reading the coverages and you're relaying that information to the starter. Like, every word that came out of everywhere at every place he went was that Kellen Moore was a very smart and savvy quarterback. And so
I loved Kellen Moore in Boise State. But here's the thing. They were teammates last year. Like, they're buddies. Can you really be mentored by your buddy, like one of your best friends? They got to do a better job than Kellen Moore. I don't know. This is the face of your franchise. You've got to get a quarterback's coach in there who's going to challenge Dak and correct these mistakes, because
they need an overhaul of the whole offensive system. That's what they need. It's not just Kellen Moore. They need to overhaul Linehan. They need to do a lot of things different.
Yeah. So I stand put on Amari Cooper. Nothing's changed for me. You're sugar.
I thought you were changing your tune a little bit.
That's my tune. That's my change tune, is that he's wearing a Cowboys uniform. It's sexier. It's the same old Cooper.
You're awful. Just give the man some credit. Like, he's actually good. Just give him credit.
He's good. He's good. But listen, the dynasty community, we got to, bring the reins here.
Yes. I said that
again, and it's been like 3 weeks. I'll pull it up again and take a look at it. But
I said that a couple weeks ago, is that we have to change our expectations for him. He can't be your number one wide receiver, but that doesn't mean he's not good.
I never said he's garbage. It's not like he's,
he's in a better situation. I think he's in a better situation now for his fantasy outlook. From a football standpoint, I agree. There's not much of a difference there. And in quarterback talent, I think it's actually a drop. But for fantasy purposes right now, this stabilizes him, and I think it makes him a better asset and more safe, predictable asset.
I agree. It's going to get better for him. And so this will be it for Amari Cooper. Okay, we're not talking about Cooper the rest of the year, unless he comes out with like a 3 touchdown.
There will be another mention of Amari Cooper on the show. If it has to be in my closing remarks, it has to be in my closing remarks.
So moving on from Dallas, there's not much else to talk about in Dallas. A couple of the guys I wanted to mention here. Another guy that we've been waiting for, and it finally happened in Seattle. running back, Rashad Penny. If you know, Rashad Penny owners who have drafted Rashad Penny have been, very antsy and very frustrated all season, and rightfully so. But it finally happened. Rashad Penny, 12 carries, 108 yards, and a touchdown. And he looked good, man. He looked good. So Seattle, and what's funny too is reports came out that Chris Carson's coming back this week. I mean, are you kidding me? After what Rashad Penny did on Sunday, they're going to go back to Chris Carson? I don't know. Anyway, we're here. Okay. It's going to be a long ride with Rashad Penny. It's probably not going to happen until next year, but it's going to happen. You just got to hold out. And you saw on Sunday who you got, at least you got to see him play. It's not like Darius Guys owners who, unfortunately we can't see Darius Guys right now. We're going to have to wait till next year, but you got to see Rashad Penny. You got to see what he's capable of. And moving forward to 2019, you're good to go as long as Pete Carroll makes the right move. So what do you think?
Yeah, no, I mean, he ran well. And just like you're saying, he's a 2019 play. Pete Carroll, I don't trust whatsoever. He's going to go right back to Chris Carson. And then if Carson gets hurt again, you'll see Mike Davis get the 25 carry game and Penny get no involvement. So I don't trust it there, which is fine. I'm actually super excited to watch everybody blow their budget on Penny this week in redraft.
Oh yeah.
So, that's just you're just asking for trouble. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he does get work, but he showed up well, and he's a 2019 play. He's not guaranteed, but I would say he's at an 85% chance to enter next year as the starter in Seattle. And he's a first round pick. You don't waste those picks on a running back, a replaceable position, if you don't have not the means, but the intention of, making him your bell cow. So he's going to get the start there going into next year. He's going to get every shot to succeed, and he probably will. First round running backs, all volume alone are sustainable for fantasy purposes. So I'm not too worried about him. Trade deadlines are obviously happening. So, if you can afford to wait another week and let him fall in carries again and Chris Carson come back, maybe you can snag him after next week. If your, trade deadline is this week, he is a guy that I'll go out and I'll make a low ball offer for. And it might be a little difficult now that he had this kind of week, but he's still someone who's probably attainable to some degree.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not like CJ Procise, where I know they spent a second round pick, I believe, on CJ Procise, and he just hasn't looked good at all, and he hasn't been healthy. But Penny's a first round pick, and Carroll, he's the kind of coach I like his style, where if you're playing better in practice, you're going to get more playing time on Sunday, and that's how we saw Russell Wilson a lot sooner than was expected. But 2019. Rashad Penny. That's pretty much it. That's all I got to say on Rashad Penny. Moving on. In that game, actually, Rams doing their thing. Ridiculous. But Cooper Kupp got hurt again this year, and he's out for the year. So I know we talked about Josh Reynolds a few episodes ago, but I just want to reiterate it. In that offense, Josh Reynolds is no joke. And, even for the future, he's a really good prospect, and I'm definitely looking to buy Josh Reynolds. And Cooper Kupp was hurt last year and now twice this year. So red flags on Kupp, even though he looks great. Cooper Kupp totally had me wrong. And I confess to that. I was not on the Cooper Kupp bandwagon as a prospect coming out of college, but he's looked great. But unfortunately, he's out for the year. So just real quick, want to touch quickly on Josh Reynolds. What do you think?
Oh, I love Josh Reynolds coming out. And I know Matt Waldman was a huge fan. I know I follow a little bit of Kyle Krabs, who at the time was NDT scouting. They've changed since. But I know Joe Marino and Kyle Krabs over there were both very big on Reynolds, and those guys do great work. Obviously Matt Waldman is who Matt Waldman is, and both or all three of those parties were very big on him. I watched some tape. He's a very exciting player, and he's going to fit right into that offense, and he'll be the number 3 option. But he'll fit fine. And what's going to happen is you'll see Woods slide into the slot. You'll probably watch Cooks remain that big play threat, and you'll see Reynolds go right to the outside, which is where he best fits. He's an outside receiver, so it's going to be fun to watch how he fits into that offense. I'm excited. He played a ton of the snaps when Cooper went down the first time, and you could get a little value late season squeeze out of him, and they're going to have to incorporate him because moving forward, he is the option. So he's no longer just like an ancillary piece that they're plugging and playing and they can scheme for the other two. They're going to have to incorporate him now because he's an every week staple, and you want to get him some exposure before the playoffs in the system, actually target him a little bit and scheme for him. And make sure he's involved in what you got going on. So along with him, I think you should watch out for Gerald Everett. I know I thought he was done behind Tyler Higbee, but he seems to, kind of show up and flash a little bit on tape. So I'm changing my tune. I think you can watch him become maybe a bigger part of this offense with Cooper Kupp down out of necessity. And, I'm excited to see what he can bring to the field and to the team.
Yeah, I love Gerald Everett. With my issue with him was never really him specifically. It's really that offense that they just never use the tight end, or I shouldn't say never, but they hardly use it. Obviously, it's filtered through Gurley, but he's an incredible talent. And that whole class, I mean, O.J. Howard, Evan Ingram, Njoku, Everett, Shaheen, I know he's hurt, but even guys like Jonnu Smith this week had a great game too. So, yeah, I would love to buy Everett and guys like Jonnu Smith. It's probably too late for Jonnu Smith, but you could still probably get Everett relatively cheap just because of that offense. So guys that I was really disappointed in this week, Tre'Quan Smith with the Saints put up a goose egg, and it's really frustrating because I know a lot of teams probably started him this week with the matchup, and I looked at him and he ran 81% of the routes, and he outsnapped Michael Thomas, and he put up a goose egg, and they scored all those points. It's just so frustrating. It was Tre'Quan Smith, but I would definitely be buying Tre'Quan Smith now. I know they signed Des Bryant. He got hurt. He's out for the year. He was a Saint for 24, 48 hours. And now they signed Brandon Marshall, but Brandon Marshall played this year already and didn't do anything in Seattle, who was desperate at the wide receiver position. Obviously he'll probably be used as a, red zone target in the end zone, but Tre'Quan Smith, he's got to be the number 2 going forward. I mean, what do you think? Why did the Saints steer away from Tre'Quan this week? Do you think maybe he's just not living up to expectations right now? Is he just too young? I mean, what are some thoughts here?
I don't think that's it at all. Honestly, I think it's just his role. Like he slid right into the Ted Ginn role, right? So one thing about Ted Ginn in that offense was he was boom or bust. And I think you're going to find that with Tre'Quan. There's going to be games where he has a 75-yard touchdown bomb. And there's going to be games where, you hope not a goose egg like he did this week, but there's going to be his down games. So that's his role, is he's literally playing the Ted Ginn role. So you've got to expect boom or bust from him. Let's just chalk this one up to maybe a little bit of an aberration. I don't think he's gonna, put up a goose egg or, 25 points, but you hope for a little bit more of a floor. But I'm just going to chalk this up to, Michael Thomas was open over the middle and they were getting the job done. Like they didn't really need to blow the top off the defense. They were, it was a Kamara and Thomas game. And so,
well, that's the thing too.
Planned out,
Yeah, they run the ball. I don't know if people realize it, but they run the ball a lot. So I know Brees scores his points in fantasy every week, and so does Michael Thomas, but it's through efficiency. They're running the ball with Ingram and Kamara. So I'm not quite sure Tre'Quan is really going to be much of a factor at all, really, the rest of the way. But
welcome back, Ingram, too, huh? He had himself a game.
Yeah, he looked great. Involved in the passing game. Taking points away from Kamara, was loving that. So, yeah.
And I do want to say, poor Dez. Like, regardless of how things ended with the Cowboys, I will always, always, always be a Dez Bryant fan. I will say that, from start to finish, my love for football really did develop with Dez Bryant and the Cowboys and those years that he was on the team. And You know, he was so much fun to watch when I was a Cowboy fan. I rooted for him. You know, he's one of those jerseys, and it's funny. I have two right now of the Cowboys jerseys that I'll never get rid of. And it's Des Bryant and Marion Barber, because I used to love the way that Marion
I
Barber would run.
loved Marion Barber. He was so
But
much fun to watch.
I do feel bad for Dez. You know, I was happy for him that he finally caught on with the team where he had a legitimate shot for a championship. You know, and it's sad when you watch guys go out like that. And that's not all from him though. There's more to come from Dez, and he's a player in this league. Like, you know, he was a big tight end. I do not think that the Cowboys made the wrong move, but I think he still has a little juice in the tank, and he's going to be, you know, someone that helps, you know, a team maybe even push it to the next level. So on to 2019 for Dez.
Yeah, it's interesting. That whole injury, the way it played out, I think it might have had something to do with Le'Veon not reporting and signing his franchise tender at week 10, because it's just another example of players not in football shape coming back and playing this game. And, you know, there is a difference between being in football shape and being in shape. And obviously they were talking about Dez. I read online that, you know, he was a few pounds overweight. He wasn't in, you know, real football shape, but he was in shape. And boom, first or second practice, and he's, you know, out for the year. So
and that was like one of the big concerns that I had with Lev sitting out. Like, that was one of the main reasons that I was taking James Conner in redraft before that news even broke that Lev wasn't going to report for forever. You know, I had James Conner in redraft when people were still drafting Le'Veon Bell. Le'Veon Bell went number 1 overall in that draft. And I still took James Conner because it was bound to happen. Like, when you're not in football shape, those soft tissue injuries and, you know, your tendons and the strain that you put on them, football shape is a real thing. Like, people just toss that term around like, oh, he's not in football shape. This is something that's legitimate. Like, if you're not in football shape and you try to go out there and compete and practice, and that's why there's training camp, to condition these guys into football shape. It is a real thing. This game is a physical sport, and there's so much cutting and pressure that you put on those tendons and the soft tissue that, you know, things like this are bound to happen when you're not in that kind of shape.
Yeah. And you would imagine that Bell knows this, and that, you know, watching from afar, Des Bryant get hurt and not be in football shape and be out for the year, you have to imagine this ran through his mind, and this might have played a role in his final decision, because he could have reported week 10, and he could have just, you know, let the team deal with him or sit, you know, but he didn't. So, I mean, listen, kudos to him for doing what he's doing here. I don't really agree with it, but he's definitely setting an example for the rest of the running backs, and you know, sticking the middle finger to the NFL for the stupid franchise tag rule. So, you know, we'll see what happens, but Bell will be back for next year. And then lastly, you know, I just want to touch on this guy real quick before we go. Devin Funchess. You know, Devin Funchess had 3 weeks in a row where he had an awesome matchup, and he didn't do anything. I mean, Tampa Bay, Pittsburgh, and now this week he's playing Detroit. God help us all. And, you know, the bye weeks are here, so you have to, if you have Funchess, unfortunately, you're going to have to roll him out there and just, you know, pray to the football gods that this guy can do something. But 3 catches last week for 30 yards, 4 catches for 40 yards the week before that, 27 yards and 3 receptions. I mean, 5, 8, 6 points in PPR. It's ridiculous. And Cam Newton's throwing the ball. What is Cam Newton doing not getting Funchess involved? And I know, listen, Greg Olson's back and he's involved in the red zone, but I mean, it's very, very annoying to see no production out of Devin Funchess. And God, you know, please get this guy off the Panthers. If we can see Funchess on a new team next year with a real quarterback who can actually throw the ball accurately, you know, Funchess truthers like myself will be, you know, ecstatic. So any thoughts on Devin Funchess here and his lack of production?
My thought is that you need to apologize for what you're saying about Cam Newton.
Scam Newton?
Cam Newton is a great quarterback. I love watching Cam Newton play.
Oh, he's a fun quarterback. He's a fantasy football quarterback, but he's not a real NFL accurate quarterback. No.
All right, regardless. Anyway, before this past game, that offense was clicking on all cylinders. They were, spreading the ball around. He was putting it in the hands of everyone but Funchess. So it's interesting. I don't know if that's just the way they're game planning or what the heck is going on. I can't say I've watched enough Panthers, which is sad since I live in South Carolina. I should watch more Panther football, but I haven't watched much recently. But I don't know what's going on there with Funchess. It is frustrating when you're putting him in your lineup and you're expecting, at least 10 points, and he's putting up like 6.7 in PPR. It is frustrating. But I will note on the Panthers that Christian McCaffrey looks fantastic between the tackles. He's got everything going for him. This is exactly what you wanted to see. This is exactly what I thought he was capable of between the tackles last year when he was my running back one coming out of that class. And, it's just fun to see it coming to fruition. He's running well. He's catching well. He's doing everything. And he's just such a dynamo in that offense.
He's incredible. Top 5 dynasty running back without a doubt. He does it all. That'll be it for the show. We're running out of time here, but just wanted to thank everybody out there for listening, and thanks for watching. And we appreciate the love and the subscribers. We're trying to get past 200. So subscribe, like, share, and let your buddies know that we're out there. And the Lions did lose this week on a parting note to the Bears. So I will send us out with my Bear hat, and Bear Nation can bear down because they beat the crappy Lions, who have no shot at doing anything this year, and probably don't have a shot at doing much with that offensive line and that garbage coaching staff. But any final thoughts for you, Nick?
No, you've kind of, with, we were just talking about trade deadlines, with most trade deadlines coming, or, I've already passed at this point. You hopefully have taken a stance on your team, whether, you're rebuilding or whether you're a contender. So, just best of luck as we head into the playoffs. You gear up. Hopefully you finish out the season strong. Definitely don't underestimate the value of a bye. It increases your chances to win a championship substantially. And anything can happen in the playoffs. Don't be afraid to go for it. Like, once you get there, especially if you're an underdog, don't fall victim to playing the floor. Like, look for the upside, try to find a matchup that you can exploit. And I'm much more likely to go to boom or bust because I want that money, man.
Yeah. It's all about that money, baby. It's all about those rings. So that'll be it. I got no final words. I just want to thank everybody for listening. So I appreciate it. So as always, for the hot pineapples, this is the Ewok Juggernaut signing out. And thanks for listening, guys. Appreciate it. Everybody want to clap. Thank you. Peace out.
Okay. We're like official now.
Yeah, we're official.
Not bad?
That's the show.
Crank through it.
Nick Chubb, 20 carries, 176 yards and a touchdown, and even caught 3 balls for 33 yards. I mean, God, we had the Chubb Club episode already. We threw the party, but man, it's really happening.
So I have that. My team is stacked. I have James Conner, Christian McCaffrey, Joe Mixon, Ezekiel Elliott, and my 5th option is Nick Chubb.
Nobody wants to hear about your fantasy team, Nick.
Oh, no, it's great. So, well, I'm so stacked, I was trying to make a run, and no one wanted to trade me a tight end. The teams that were out, no one wanted to trade me like I tried to give Chubb and Cortland Sutton for Zach Ertz. I tried to give Chubb and Cortland Sutton. I mean, I tried everything to get a tight end, and sure enough, here he goes, drops 34 points. He's sitting on my bench, and it just makes me smile because, well, hey, the trade deadline's done now. That was it. That was their last chance, and then Chubb drops 34.
You know, we all said that Nick Chubb was a second half guy, and here we are waiting for it to happen, and it's here. You can't bail on him now. But trade deadlines, you know, for Dynasty, you know, redraft, who cares? But for Dynasty, we recently in the NFLMAX League pushed it back to week 13, and for a long time it was week 10. But listen, we're playing Dynasty here. I mean, I do not like the trade deadline early. I don't know. You run a couple leagues too. So what are your thoughts on trade deadlines, you know, at all, and pushing them back to week 13?
As far as, you know, an actual dynasty, you know, I refer to it as an actual dynasty when it's on another site other than Reality Sports. But as far as an actual dynasty, I tend to agree. Like, if you're keeping those players for forever and there's no expiring contracts, I'm okay not having a trade deadline, only because, like, if you're actually, you know, a rebuilding team, it gives you a longer window to kind of, you know, make those assets valuable, and you're not just going to be trading them because they're expiring and going away.
Yeah. Well, for non-salary cap leagues.
Yes.
That's
the key distinction, I think, because in salary cap league, you can treat these trades like a redraft.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because they're expiring anyway and they're off your books. But in an actual dynasty, I would be fine not having a trade deadline.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Over the past few years, I realized that it's just better just to push it back. Let the big dogs fight it out in the postseason.